In the spirit of Halloween, paranormal or not, what is the scariest, creepiest or most unsettling experience of your life? When I was 16 in the mid-90s, aka the I know everything, I'm invincible and you can't stop me age, I got in a fight with an acquaintance while a whole bunch of us were hanging out at his house. Stupid fight. Can't remember what about, but I decided frick it, I was going home. I lived about 5 miles away, but I didn't have a car, and since it was 2 AM, there were no buses. I was going to walk home, in the middle of the night, though a not as safe as it seemed neighborhood, as a tiny 16-year-old girl, so I did. I think, in hindsight, my friends either didn't believe I was going to do it, or were too startled by the sudden argument to realize what I was doing. I left the house and started hoofing it. About a mile out, the suburban housing neighborhood melted into a main street, with highway access. I started to notice a grayish minivan following me. It would follow me, pass me, turn a corner, and about 3 blocks later, it would do the same thing. I mean, really obvious what it was doing. I crossed over to the other side of the street so I was walking the opposite of traffic flow, and thus no car could come up behind me. It kept doing it, on the other side of the street. About a mile later, there was a 24-hour Fred Meyer West Coast USA chain grocery all-purpose store. Lights bright, but parking lot empty-ish. I immediately crossed the parking lot and went ahead inside. Just before I got to the doors, the minivan that had been following me pulled up into one of the parking spots. A guy called out from the driver's side and said, "I don't want you to walk over here, just stay there and listen. I just wanted to let you know what I was doing. I saw you walking a while back, but I also saw a dark car that was following you. A couple of times you went to turn around, or stopped, so it started following you down a parallel side street. When I saw it, I started to follow you both, just to make sure you were safe. Go inside the store, and call someone to come pick you up, please. I haven't seen the car since you headed across the lot." He waited until I was inside the store, and then pulled away. I didn't have anyone to call, so I just let the night cashier know what was going on, and hung out with her for about an hour and a half. Then I finished the walk home. I've never forgotten the incident, or that man, whoever he was. During the walk, I never saw the dark car he mentioned, but I've always been convinced he saved my life that night. Guy in the dark car had seen a suspicious minivan. Back when I worked night shift as a security guard, I would experience mild hallucinations due to my poor sleep schedule. I was doing my patrol and I was feeling particularly out of it, so I kept getting those flashes of movement in the corner of my eye, but I was convinced it was just my brain freaking up. At the site I was working, there is a large warehouse filled with chemical waste that has only one light on in it. As I'm going along, I see a pale shape on the ground and quickly recognize it as a body. My adrenaline spikes and I nearly pass out. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a CPR dummy the workers left out for training. Since it seems to be a point of interest, I figure I'll clarify. Pass out is probably not the best description of my reaction. It was more like my mind blanked and it took a second for me to regain my senses. I was truly scared that I just found a dead body, as I am not an armed guard and was over a mile away from any assistance. Definitely, it was more my imagination overworking what was actually a simple situation. I was sitting in our office room home alone when I was 19. I was typing a paper for one of my college classes. The office room used to be my sister's room before she moved out, so a lot of her decorations are still there. She had a photo of a mountain range, an oval-shaped mirror, and 3 different hangings that read faith, hope, and love. This makes 5 total things hanging on the wall in the room. Suddenly, I got random chills, which happens all the time. It was pretty cold, but this time, as soon as I got the chills, everything in the room hanging on the walls fell off simultaneously. This really freaked me out, but it got a tiny bit worse. I got up and walked out of the room only to notice everything hanging on a wall in my house had fell, besides the television in my room, all the pictures in the living room and other rooms, all the trophies in my room from Little League sports, and even a stand that held candles. I wasn't sure what to do. I picked up all the stuff and hung it back up, which actually took me around 15-20 minutes. Then I drove to campus to finish my paper. Never told my parents. It's also worth mentioning this happened around noon on a sunny day 3 winters ago. Probably a small earthquake, but it's way more fun to imagine it was a noon wraith. Growing up, my bedroom was the only one that faced the front of the house street. When I was about 8 or 9, I woke up to my dad calmly but firmly telling me to get up, go in the bathroom, and shut the door. I was annoyed because I was half asleep, but I listened. Apparently I was more tired than I realized, because I fell asleep on the bathroom floor. The next morning I asked my mom what happened. She seemed oblivious and confused. I looked at my dad like she was crazy, and I asked him why he had woken me up. He denied doing it. I was becoming frustrated to the point of tears, but I ultimately let it go. Fast forward to college. I was home one break, and I decided to ask again. I had thought of that night off and on for years, and it still bothered me. This time, my dad goes, "Huh, I was wondering if you even remembered that. Turns out that a lot of houses on our block were being vandalized and robbed all those years ago. Someone had broken into the garage and was inside the house. My room was partially over the garage. My dad heard it happen and quietly got me to safety. Police were called. The guy ran. He was never caught, however, and my parents didn't want a terrified kid on their hands, so for years they pretended like nothing had ever happened. It wasn't supernatural, but it was unsettling for sure." Oh god. First half of the story, I thought the robber was the one that told you to go to the bathroom. The most unsettling incident in my life, well, one of them would be during family dinner when I was about 8 years old. My mum suddenly came out with, "It took me months to get your father's bloodstains out of the wall. The smell of his body was terrible and really clung to," and then gazed off into the distance, utterly unaware of how shocking and unconducive to eating such a remark would be. My dad committed suicide not long after they split up. He did it in the kitchen of our flat while we were staying at Grandma and Grandpa's house. Someone, presumably my dad, also turned the thermostat up to the max before he died. He wasn't found for several weeks either. So, yeah, I can imagine it was quite a horrific scene. My impression was that mum was psychologically damaged by going through that, and as a result, she lost any sense of what was appropriate to share with a child or not. Sometimes I do wonder if he was murdered and that's why the thermostat was cranked to the max, and also no one bothered to check on a man who was known to be suicidal and alone in a house, not going to work and failing to show up for his psych appointments for 3 weeks, at the least. It was neglectful. Sometimes it's hard hugging my mum when I have suspicions that she had a greater role in my dad's death than she will ever admit to. I know how clever and scheming she can be, but I will never know for sure, and I know how hurtful and angry I get when someone else thinks they know that I'm guilty of something and I know I'm innocent, so I try to keep it buried. On a way to a camping trip, I passed by an old, painted up car with decorations of Muppets and stuff on it, obviously owned by a crazy person who couldn't drive over 50 miles per hour. Without stopping, we passed the same car 40 minutes later. I've had multiple times when I've woken up in the middle of the night and was sure I could see a figure in my room until I turned on my bedside light. Usually this scares me a bit, but my most memorable one was waking up thinking I saw some short figure at the end of my bloody bed and saying "frick off, I'm trying to sleep," then returning to burying my face into the comfort of my pillow. Seems like it worked. Now there's a British solution to a paranormal problem if I've ever heard one. Not so much scary but kind of crazy, and something I cannot explain or understand. In high school I had a friend, we'll call him John for these purposes. Me and John played football together and we would always get extra lifting sessions in at the high school gym. We remained friends after high school and even worked together for a bit. He ended up getting into selling pills and our relationship deteriorated to the point we were no longer speaking. Fast forward a few years later and I have this dream. In my dream, I am back at my high school gym lifting weights with John. We were just chatting about random stuff, having a good time, and then he suddenly says that he has to go. I tell him I don't want him to leave because I want to keep hanging out and I missed him. He just says he's really sorry but has to leave. I say okay, see you later, and he replies with a nod and a see ya. I woke up to the sound of my phone ringing. I see it is my mom and answer it. She tells me that John had died last night and asking if I am okay and other mom stuff. She had heard from John's mom, who called in saying that John's siblings would not be at school the rest of the week because of his death. My mom was a secretary at the school they went to. I can't help but think that something paranormal had happened to allow me to make peace with and say goodbye to my friend and have some bit of closure. He was 25 when he died of an overdose and was the first person really close to me who had died. It's so interesting to read all these similar experiences. It makes me think there may be something to the idea that when we die we have a chance to, in some way, try to connect with people we care about. I don't know if it is spiritual, psychological, or something else, but it is something I am happy for. Also, minor text fixes. My friend was not fried. I knew the moment my aunt died, 900 miles away, and the moment my grandma died, 3 blocks away. I'm with you. On my previous job, when our building was still under construction, the only floors that were occupied were the 1st, 2nd, 5th, 6th and 7th. One time I was alone inside the elevator going from 1st to the 6th floor when suddenly it stopped and opened on the 3rd floor. Normally I would just disregard it, but rumors were all over that a ghost child was playing around on the vacant floors. So I pressed the close button as fast as I could. When it closed, I heard noises like someone was tapping their fingers on the walls of the elevator. Hello. Could you please open the elevator? This is Bob and I got off on the wrong floor and I'm scared AF. My family told me this. I had fever very often when I was young. The medicines didn't help. One day, a stranger on the street asked my mum if I was always sick and who was the elderly following me. My mum was confused as there was no elderly nearby. The stranger pointed into the air and described my dead paternal grandmother's look, the hairstyle and clothes she wore to her grave. My dad was from a different town and my mum would have known it if the stranger was a mutual friend. The stranger instructed my dad to call my grandmother to go back. My mysterious fevers stopped. Walking towards a pack of howling wild dogs on the other side of a bush line, going to get rid of them to protect cattle. Several hundred meters away they got our scent on the wind. Those howls turned to growls and snarls. 10-year-old me booked it back home. That moment you realize they know you and where you are was creepy. To clear something up for anyone asking, I was with my dad and 17-year-old brother. They were both armed. When we got in growling range and heard them, I freaked, looked at dad and said I'm going home and legged it downhill toward my house. Dad said later he didn't even think my legs touched the ground, I was going that fast. I remember coming to a barbed wire fence and not even slowing down, just dove into an army roll under it and kept going. Dad and my brother continued on. When they go around the corner of the trees and in sight, 1 adult and 4 half-grown pups charged them. Brother froze. Dad saw that the alpha was still sitting and growling, so he had a quick pot shot. Just missed, but it was enough to scare them off. I was home alone once when my parents were out of town. We had just moved into our house, so there was an empty lot next to our house, with a house half built. My parents were the types to leave the outdoor side garage door unlocked. Dumbasses, I know. Well, while they were gone I was watching TV, and all of a sudden the door that leads into my garage from the inside starts to wiggle. I put my TV on mute and I listen again. I see it actually move that time. I start freaking out and I'm kind of in shock looking for the phone. Can't find the house phone, so I search for my cell. Remembered I left my charger in my parents' car, so I'm frantically looking for the house phone. Our house was so new, my mom hadn't even put blinds or drapes up in the kitchen or living room. Well, whoever was wiggling my garage doorknob starts banging on the windows in my living room. Again, no blinds or phone, and at that moment I realize this guy is seeing my every move, so I shoot upstairs. Again looking frantically for the phone and also trying to figure out how and where I'd jump out of my house to get away from the maniac that's outside my house if I needed to. He then starts pounding on my front door. I can tell at that point, he is using something metal or plastic by the sound of the thumps. I really thought he was going to shoot my door open. I remember at that moment I was pissed at myself for being a dumbass teenager that frequently talked on the phone because I always just left it lying around, never putting it back on the base. I wanted so badly to push the button that detects where my house phone is, but I thought if he heard where it was, He'd break the window nearest to it and take it. I then remembered I left the phone in my mom's room, and as I pass the hallway to her room I see two people pacing in front of my house. I'm freaking out trying to find my dad's gun in my parents' bedroom. I find the phone and call 911. As I'm on the phone, the window breaks. I'm upstairs and am scared to death. Suddenly everything goes silent. I'm waiting in my parents' pitch black closet for what seems like an eternity. Then I hear the sirens. Cops show up but there is no one to be found. I figured that they hadn't gone too far since it had just occurred. Cops never found my tormentors. On the plus side, the company building the house next door, same company that built ours, hired overnight security to stay on our street until the house was built, which was definitely refreshing. It was definitely a scary experience. I was 17 at the time. I did suffer from night terrors for about a month, then recovered. TLDR. Two guys try to break into my house while I'm home alone. Torment me for what seems to be eternity. Call cops. Don't catch the perpetrators. Gain overnight security because of experience. Honestly thought it was your parents trying to get back in. My friend died in a car accident and they towed the car pretty early in the day. We were teens so we thought we should go collect all her things that were ejected from the car when she hit the tree. After about a half hour, I was overwhelmed and just sat down and started crying. I had my two friends with me cleaning stuff up, and they just let me get it out for a bit. Someone started rubbing my shoulders in the deepest massage I have ever had, and it was really helping me get control of myself and relaxing me. I let them rub for a few minutes and then I put my hand on theirs to let them know I was appreciative. There was no hand, just my shoulder. I turned around to say thank you to whoever it was, and there was nobody. I looked up at the car and my two friends were standing there talking about something. Something had been touching me. I ran to the car and asked my friends if it was them. They looked at me like I was crazy. I made everyone get in the car super fast and we left. I think a spirit was comforting me in my loss, and I am grateful and freaked out for it. I can still remember how it felt, and it's been 22 years. Maybe it was your friend comforting you. When I was a kid, I woke up in the middle of the night to my bed shaking. Normally that would scare the crap out of me, but instead I was just kind of annoyed. I rolled over and muttered, "Stop it." The shaking stopped immediately. Then a male voice speaks right beside me, saying, "Sorry." That's when I freaked out. I'm pretty sure my childhood house was haunted. Paranormal activity, social awkwardness. Literally my second comment on Reddit ever. Driving on a super isolated road late at night in buttfuck New Mexico. 285 north. For those who know. For those who don't, it's a skinny little 2-lane road for the most part which goes right through the middle of a lot of nothing with roughly 100 miles of fuck all on either side of it, and got followed for a long ways by a huge black pickup truck. One of those giant Dodge King Ranch things. All black. Cow catcher on the front. Limo black on all the windows. Everything. It tailgated me at 85 miles per hour for about 75 miles, and when I stopped at a truck stop to pee it pulled off too, but nobody got out. It just idled away in the parking lot until I got back in and got on the highway again. Sucker followed me all the way to Carlsbad before peeling off and heading back south. I've never seen it again, but I refuse to make that drive by myself anymore. See, but that was the problem in the first place. By the sounds of it, you didn't make that drive by yourself. X-Files theme plays. I was on a small base in Afghanistan in 2003, just outside of Kabul, right before you got into the mountains heading toward Pakistan. It was an Al-Qaeda camp before we bombed the crap out of it and took it over. We established an observation post, guard tower, on the roof of one of the buildings that was still standing. It was about 5 stories and nothing but concrete. No windows, no doors, though there were spaces where they once were, and debris that made it look like it may have been an office building, hasty medical facility. Then you go into the bathrooms. Dried blood everywhere, clogging the drains on the floor, in the urinals, in the toilets, bloody handprints and spatters on the walls. The blood had even pooled on the floor due to clogged drains and hardened in place. This was every bathroom in the building. They were clearly used to slaughter people. At night, if you sat and listened, you would start to hear crying. I don't believe in God, an afterlife, or anything, Really? That you can't provide concrete proof of? I heard that crap, and I can't explain it other than to say I had heard stories of it from people and gave it a try, so maybe it was all in my head. I sat on the stairs, middle of the building, maybe 3rd or 4th floor, and didn't hear anything for a while. Started thinking it was bulls. Then I started to hear it. I thought maybe I was being fricked with, so I decided to go search where I thought I heard it coming from. I go left and start looking. It wasn't a very complex building. A few big rooms on either side that were sparsely scattered with debris. Easy to see they were empty. No one in the bathrooms. I stopped to hone in on the sound. It's coming from the other end of the building. Still could be someone messing with me, so I head over there for a look. Same thing. Nothing. I listen again, and it's back to coming from the opposite side of the building. I decided at that point that, real or joke, I'm out. Everyone heard it. We all eventually just ignored it. Could have been the wind, the pipes, or lots of other things. Still was creepy at the time. The crying may have been in your head, but that blood was real and far more terrifying if you ask me. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.